Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Josh Speaks Digital podcast. Today, I have another amazing guest in our series of how I started a podcast. So, today we're talking to Monique A.J. Smith. Now, Monique A.J. Smith is a leadership strategist, and she is also known as the athleticpreneur. So, I thought that was really creative. So, Monique A.J. Smith is once again, leadership strategist that guides athletic departments and individuals who wish to advance in athletic administration in the marketplace of higher education. She's a veteran of 30 years and launched her consulting business, Seeds of Empowerment. So she is the podcast host of Chat in the Garden. She is an amazing individual, and I know you guys are all going to really love this podcast episode. So let's go ahead and hop into it and hear from Monique A.J. Smith. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Josh Speaks Digital podcast. My name is Jessica. I go by Josh Speaks, and we are continuing on with our Why I Started a Podcast series. Today, I have Monique A.J. Smith, and she is the podcast host of Chat in the Garden. So thank you so much for coming on, Monique. Tell me why you started your podcast.
I actually started my podcast on a dare, actually. I belong with a publicist, and she contacted me. She had another client who was trying to win the most longest podcast out there. And I was like, okay. She said, would you want to be a host or would you want to be a guest? And I said, I have control issues. I'll be the host. And because I did training 30 years ago when I was in college, and I took a radio class. I know how to splice. I know how to do the old school radio. And that's why I started a podcast. But actually, the person that I did that for didn't work out. He wasn't professional. And I said, you are really a natural. I have someone else I want you to try out. So Clark Garrison of Survival Radio Network asked me to join his team. And I did. And I could pick my own topics and those kind of things. And so because I've been athletic administrator and professional development was one of the parts of my job I really enjoyed by being a social commission with the CIAA, I knew that women of color needed some way of being able to be highlighted, to be exposed in order to get those positions. And it's been 6 years and it's been great. And interesting enough, because I belonged to a network, there were things that they said you had to do. And so you said you had to have a Facebook page. So I created the Facebook page, and 6 years later, we are 1,500 people plus, just because of a podcast. And so I only interview African-American female athletic administrators every week. And it's once a week, every Wednesday. And it's interesting because he wasn't familiar with athletics. And he said, well, won't that be very slim? First, again, I did only athletic directors. So we started in August. I believe I went from August to February. So now, hopefully, and again, the pipeline is increasing. I even had one, not the NCAA, but the NAIA contact me to assist them to increase the pipeline. And so I took a whole month and I highlighted the women of color. They did not have, I think they only had 3 women of color athletic directors, and I already have them on the show. So we did presidents, and that was in 2017. And 2019, in the summer, 4 women of color became athletic directors within the NAIA. And the thought was they were not familiar with the NAIA because the only thing they were being introduced to was the NCAA. And then the NAIA weren't introduced to the top stars. And what I call my show is a Chat in the Garden with Monique A.J. Smith, where significance blooms in athletics and sports. And so each time you say the name of the podcast, you say that line. And it's really very similar to back in the 60s and 70s. James Brown says, I'm Black and I'm proud. And when we begin to say that, we begin to believe that. So when individuals say, yes, so-and-so is coming on a Chat in the Garden where significance blooms, then they begin to know that they are significant in what they do.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. So rich. There's so much there that I wish we could go back into, but I think I'll have you back again so we can get really deep into it. And you kind of touched on the second question a bit in the first answer, but what impact do you hope your podcast has in the world?
Really is to be able to show women of color that are leading athletic departments and that they're being successful at it. And I like to say significant at it because success is really defined by society. And then you actually define your significance. So, athletic directors or CEOs of the athletic department, and they plan the mission and the vision of what they label as successful or significant. And so, therefore, when you do that, I can't say you have control, but you're not allowing society to tell you what that is. So, whether that is, I want my student athletes to graduate versus society talking about winning, I mean, you need to make sure that you're aligned with the institution that you're working for, but you got to make sure that that's levering out. Otherwise, you're going to be in conflict and you're not going to be able to advance.
Okay. And then moving into our third question here, what is one thing you want people to know about a podcast or about podcasting, I should say?
Well, podcasting is a great influencer. And it's just like I tell my students. I have students in my class that are commentators. And I teach race and gender in sports. And I would say, when you're watching a match, just look at two different things. When you watch Serena and Venus, you might not understand the rules of the game. So whoever is talking about the game becomes the influencer on you and how you watch the game. And so as an influencer, you have an opportunity to influence how people look at your industry, depending upon what you're doing a podcast on. So you are really impacting your area expertise. And you got to be really, really social conscious, social responsible about what you say. Because it can't, because you just be, if you think about it, some words and jargons that we use, where did it come from? And what I tell my students in my class, there's no barbershop talking here. You're going to have some substance behind your statements. And so I would say the podcast, it has some substance behind what you're trying to portray out there. Many people think podcasting is the social engagement. And no, I mean, yes, there's not being regulated like regular radio. But because I have been trained in that, I don't, and that's one reason why the first guy that I was on his show with, I said, absolutely not. I can't work with him. I get it. I get it. So she gave me the most professional engineer and CEO in Clark Garrison. And mind you, he loves what we're doing. I'm making impact because I had a couple of incidents. One lady had been an associate AD at a big Power 5 institution, and she came off the ramp to have a family. So she was concerned about getting back on the ramp. And she said listening to the podcast gave her life. And then I have young people who are trying to get their first job. And they're listening to other women about their advice. Because on my show, I do three things. We talk about their career path, their advice for others, and their current initiatives. So many people want to get me, and can I pick your brain, how you get in the business. And I said, look, I give you a free advice, a podcast. You got access to all of the podcasts previously. And what I do is when I post a pre-show, I see what people make comments or like. And I ask them, do you have a question I can ask on your behalf live? Which increases engagement because those people are going to either try to listen live or they're going to try to get the replay. And what I do, honestly, is drive everybody back to the group to look at the replay or drive them to my email marketing so I can send them the replay there. I have people always asking me, have you thought about putting it on iTunes and all the other? I said, no. I mean, it's going to get there, but the point is to engage. My people are career driven and they want to know how to get into this field. And so it's more than just listen to the podcast. It's being engaged with other women of color in athletic administration in a safe space. But it's a great place to create a community.
Well, I love the fact that you're bringing in the social media piece into it, right? That you're encompassing all of that together and then saying, okay, who are you? And really trying to get to know who your audience is and then what they want, right? Because it's interesting that you said you don't put it up on iTunes and you don't put it up all the other distribution outlets for that reason, because you want to create a space and a place where they feel safe and they can talk about the issues and you can answer questions directly. It differentiates you from everybody else in the podcast sphere. So I'm wondering, tell us a little bit more about that. I want you to go a little bit more in detail about that really quick. Why don't you put it on other distribution outlets?
I will say this: I promote it on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, which is crucial, and Facebook. Okay, so I promote it on different areas, which I draw people to the group. So if you're not on Facebook, you end up on my email marketing. All right, and I use it as a tool to grow my business. So, and people always ask, do you use a podcast to grow your business? Absolutely so, because I actually have sponsors that sponsor the show. I have one guy who has followed me personally on social media. He's a Caucasian man who has a business similar, because I'm a consultant. So I'm a leadership strategist that travels to athletic departments to do staff retreats for our staff and student athlete workshops. Okay. So my guests on the show become my clients. Okay. And so then other people who want to go to the college campuses want to come on my show. And I said, well, you can't come on the show because you're not athletic administrator, you're not a woman of color. I said, but you can record a 30-second spot and I can play it every week for a price. So, yes, I am a full-time business here, and if I put
I
in
love
different,
how straight up you are, though.
people always say that, you have to wonder where I'm coming from. And so, and I'm also a consultant for individuals who wish to advance athletic administration. I have two programs, one called the Advanced Academy, and then I have Speakers Bureau, people who want to also come in and so people, might not want to see me every year on the athletic department, but, you have somebody that sensitivity training where I don't do that. So I had someone that was part of my Speakers Bureau, and I put them onto that. And so it all is a vehicle that all kind of comes together. It's a circle, and you don't know when it's just like when you have those circles that you ramp on or ramp off, traffic circles, and so you don't know when you get on, but you can go around. You can get off, but you can get back on too, maybe in a different spot. It may be that you're a Speakers Bureau person, then you might get back on as a sponsor of the podcast. If you don't have a product, you can't be a sponsor on the podcast. But what I say to people, and this is really important, I've been trying to get the women to speak about your niche, because you got to have more than one income, because universities, like anything else, have a high turnover rate with leadership. And it's very similar to your bank. Is your bank the same name it was 10 years ago? No. I can't imagine anybody at the bank that's still the same name. So when people change leadership, they change from top to bottom. It's not personal. But if your name is already out there, you've been on my podcast, and if you're known for something, and I got you speaking and whatnot, you'll more readily be able to sustain yourself until you land in your next institution. So I'm teaching and selling and promoting all at the same time.
I love it. And you've definitely found something that works for you. So I love the fact that you've been just kind of reproducing and doing the same thing over and over again because you know that it works.
Yes.
So I love the fact that you're doing that. So Monique, we definitely need to have you back because
I can already tell that I have so many questions to ask you. But I'm just talking to myself, Jessica, keep it to the series, keep it to the series. So tell everyone where they can find you, Monique, and you definitely, we'll definitely connect again to have you back on, but tell everyone where they can find your podcast, where they can find you, all your social media handles, all that good stuff.
Well, I like to engage people on LinkedIn. Okay. And so my name on LinkedIn is Monique A period J period Smith. And my podcast can be found chatinthegarden.com. I'm a part of a network, again, Survival Radio Network. Bob Garrison is the host. If you're on Facebook, you can ask to join. If you're athletic administrator, all right, a chat in the garden with Monique A.J. Smith. On Twitter, I am the host of chat. I like to engage my students in that because what I'll do is I will forward or make a comment on a current article, and it keeps everybody abreast on such things. And then on Instagram, I'm Seeds of Empowerment because my company's called Seeds of Empowerment. We plant seeds of empowerment to lead others to greatness.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on, Monique. And I'm sure this won't be the last time. Thank you for getting digital with us, and we will see you soon.